In a small Atlanta courtroom, an 8-year-old black boy named Jamal stepped into a legal battle over his future, armed with an uncanny grasp of the law that left the judge, jury, and everyone present in awe of his brilliance. Jamal Carter was no ordinary third grader. Growing up in Atlanta's West End, he lived with his mother, LaToya, a single parent and social worker who struggled to make ends meet. From an early age, Jamal showed a remarkable intellect, devouring books and asking questions that stumped adults. By age 6, he was reading at a middle school level, particularly drawn to his mother's old college textbooks on sociology and law. LaToya encouraged his curiosity, often discussing her work with him, unaware that he was absorbing legal concepts like jurisdiction and precedent with startling clarity. In early 2024, their lives took a dramatic turn when a custody dispute landed them in family court, pitting LaToya against Jamal's father, Marcus, who had reappeared after years of absence. Marcus, a truck driver who had left when Jamal was a toddler, filed for joint custody, claiming he wanted to reconnect with his son. LaToya, skeptical of his intentions, opposed the motion, citing his history of inconsistency and lack of involvement. The case was assigned to Judge Evelyn Harper, a seasoned family court judge known for her no-nonsense approach. LaToya, unable to afford a private attorney, relied on a court-appointed lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, who was competent but overworked. Jamal, aware of the stakes, began researching family law on his own, using library computers and borrowing books from a local paralegal who had taken an interest in his potential. He understood that the court would consider his best interests, and he wanted to ensure his voice was heard. The hearing took place in March 2024 at the Fulton County Courthouse. Jamal, dressed in a neatly pressed shirt and tie, sat beside his mother, his small frame barely reaching the table's edge. The courtroom was modest, with a dozen jurors, a handful of spectators, and court staff present. Marcus, represented by a private attorney, argued that he had turned his life around, citing a stable job and a new apartment. LaToya's lawyer countered with evidence of Marcus's past unreliability, including missed child support payments and long periods of no contact. The judge listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Jamal, who was quietly taking notes on a legal pad. The pivotal moment came when Judge Harper, following protocol, asked if Jamal wished to speak. In family court, children could express their preferences, though their statements rarely carried legal weight unless articulated with clarity. LaToya hesitated, worried about putting pressure on her son, but Jamal nodded confidently. "I'd like to talk, Your Honor," he said, his voice clear and steady. The room stirred, jurors exchanging curious glances. Judge Harper, intrigued, allowed him to proceed, expecting a brief, emotional statement. Instead, Jamal stood, clutching his notes, and delivered a presentation that stunned everyone. "Your Honor," Jamal began, "I've read about the best interest standard under Georgia Code Section 19-9-3. It says the court has to consider things like the emotional bond between a child and parent, the stability of the home, and the parent's ability to meet the child's needs. I want to explain why I think staying with my mom is best for me." The courtroom fell silent, jurors leaning forward. Jamal continued, citing specific examples: his mother's consistent support, her involvement in his education, and the stability of their home despite financial struggles. He contrasted this with Marcus's absence, noting that his father had only contacted him twice in the past year, both times briefly. "There's no emotional bond," Jamal said, "because he hasn't been part of my life." Marcus's attorney, caught off guard, tried to interrupt, objecting that a child couldn't present legal arguments. Judge Harper overruled. Her curiosity piqued. "Let the boy speak," she said. "He's entitled to express his views." Jamal went on, referencing a case he'd found in the library, Troxel v. Granville, 2000. A U.S. Supreme Court decision about parental rights. "It says parents have a fundamental right to raise their kids," he explained, "but it also says the child's welfare comes first. I think my welfare is with my mom, who's always been there." He paused, looking at the jury. "I'm not saying my dad can't be in my life, but joint custody means splitting my time, and that's not stable for me right now." The jurors were visibly stunned, some scribbling notes, others whispering to each other. Marcus's attorney, flustered, tried to redirect, questioning Jamal's understanding of the law. Jamal responded calmly, explaining that he'd studied family law basics with help from a paralegal friend. "I know I'm young," he said, "but I understand what's at stake. I want to stay in my school with my friends and with my mom, who knows my routine and my needs." LaToya, tears in her eyes, squeezed his hand. Marcus, sitting across the room, looked uncomfortable, his earlier confidence fading. Judge Harper, rarely surprised in her 20 years on the bench, took a moment to collect herself. "Young man," she said, "your understanding of this process is impressive. I'll take your statements into consideration." She then called a recess to review the case further, asking both attorneys to submit additional evidence on the child's best interests. During the break, court staff and jurors murmured about Jamal's composure and knowledge. One juror, a retired teacher, later told a reporter she'd never seen a child articulate their case so clearly. "He sounded like a lawyer," she said. The hearing resumed with testimony from a social worker who had evaluated both parents. She corroborated Jamal's account, noting LaToya's stable home environment and Marcus's limited involvement. Marcus's attorney argued that his client deserved a chance to rebuild the relationship, but the judge pressed for specifics on how Marcus planned to prioritize Jamal's needs. Marcus struggled to answer, admitting he hadn't considered the impact of joint custody on Jamal's school schedule. LaToya's lawyer, bolstered by Jamal's statement, emphasized the importance of continuity for a child thriving in his current environment. By the second day, the courtroom was packed, word of Jamal's performance having spread. Local media had caught wind of the story, with reporters waiting outside to interview anyone involved. Jamal, unaware of the growing attention, remained focused, sitting attentively as the attorneys made their closing arguments. Judge Harper delivered her ruling that afternoon, granting LaToya sole custody with supervised visitation for Marcus. "The court is guided by the best interests of the child," she said, looking at Jamal. "Your input was exceptionally clear and well-reasoned, and it helped clarify what's at stake here." She added that Marcus could petition for a review in a year if he demonstrated consistent involvement. The ruling was met with quiet applause from LaToya's supporters in the gallery. Jamal, relieved, hugged his mother tightly. Marcus left the courtroom without comment, his attorney promising to appeal but later dropping the plan due to lack of grounds. The story exploded online after a courtroom sketch artist shared a drawing of Jamal speaking, captioned with his quote about the best interest standard. A local news station aired a segment that evening featuring interviews with LaToya and Sarah Mitchell, who praised Jamal's initiative. "He did his homework," Sarah said. "I've never seen anything like it." Social media amplified the story, with hashtags like #JamalTheLegalKid and #AtlantaProdigy trending. Community organizations reached out, offering scholarships and mentorship programs for Jamal. A local law firm, impressed by his potential, created a fund to support his education, ensuring he could access resources for his studies. Jamal's school held an assembly where he was honored for his courage, though he remained humble, telling classmates he just wanted to help his mom. LaToya, overwhelmed by the support, used the attention to advocate for better legal resources for low-income families, speaking at community forums alongside Jamal. The impact extended beyond Atlanta. Legal educators cited Jamal's case as an example of why children's voices matter in custody disputes. Judge Harper, in a rare interview, called Jamal's presentation a wake-up call for the system, prompting her to push for more child-focused training for family court judges. Jamal, meanwhile, continued his studies, adding constitutional law to his reading list. He joined a junior debate team, where his ability to cite legal precedents earned him the nickname Counselor Carter. The courtroom moment, a fleeting display of an 8-year-old's brilliance, became a beacon of inspiration, proving that intellect and courage could shine even in the smallest of voices.